Wow, Newcastle were incredible tonight. Not just the fact that they won the game 3-1, but that was one of the most convincing performances I'd seen from Newcastle in recent times. They were unbelievable. Like, I don't even think Villa were bad. I just think that Newcastle were really good and really well managed when they went to five at the back. And the interesting thing is, I knew that Newcastle were good. And I said, look, I think Newcastle have had so many problems with injuries and players sort of being unavailable and fitness. But I said, even in the Fulham game, which wasn't the most convincing one, I said they won because they have that quality in the squad. They've got a good manager, they've got good players. It's just keeping them fit. But I didn't expect them to go and win versus Villa today. Villa are unbeaten at home all season. Villa have the best home record in the whole of 2023 out of all the Premier League sides. Best home record in the league. The least goals conceded, the most goals scored, or the second most goals scored. And Newcastle have come to Villa Park, which I think is a bit of a bogey ground for Newcastle, and won. And one convincingly deserved to win. They were absolutely phenomenal. And I generally thought Villa were going to win this game because of their home record, because of how good Villa have been this season, and because Newcastle have been missing so many players. And I think, they had one win in 7 sort of prior to the break, and they dropped off. But they were brilliant. Anthony Gordon didn't get a goal or assist today, so he probably won't be spoken about a lot, but he was brilliant. He was everywhere, and he's such a hard-working player that actually does a lot of stuff off the ball that people don't notice. Not just his ability to press, but his ability to create space for the opposition, his ability to sort of alternate between the wing and the central roles, to be versatile. He's got very good reading of the game, and I think he's a manager's dream because he's tactically someone that, if you need to make some changes, he can do that. Eddie Howe, unfortunately, because Isaac is injured, and Wilson, Isak, they just can't stay fit for Newcastle, and maybe they're going to have to go for a striker on loan if they can with FFP, because that is worrying. But Gordon had to go centrally today, and he does that fine. He's good on the wing. He's always going at people. He's always electric, but he had to go centrally today, and that was fine. And what he does is he makes runs that create space because he draws defenders out and opens up gaps for other Newcastle players to attack in. He links up well. He drives at people. He's direct. And I think, Southgate needs to look at him. I think he's very underrated by rivals. He wasn't the most convincing when he first came to Newcastle, but this season he's been phenomenal. I think I put him as my most improved player this season. And I think, yet again, Anthony Gordon has had a very good game. I think he's arguably, you could say, been Newcastle's best player this season. I mean, across the whole of the season, because people like Botman have been injured. They've had a lot of players injured. Maybe Trippier, maybe Gordon, maybe Bruno Guimaraes. A lot of the other players have been injured. But Anthony Gordon's a great player because he's got the pace, he's got the movement, he's got the work rate, he's got the reading of the game. I think he is a manager's dream. And a player that I thought does sometimes need to prove himself was Almiron. And I thought Almiron came on and was very good. And what I noticed personally was, and I said this about United, I did a big rant about United, how we don't cross to Højlund, how Højlund gets no service. And I said when Garnacho plays on the right because he's right-footed, all of a sudden he creates more chances. When Anthony plays on the left, all of a sudden he creates more chances. Garnacho and Anthony's assists have come from Anthony on the left because he's left-footed. Everyone knows he's left-footed because he's only got one foot. And Garnacho on the right. But then we were playing, Garnacho on the left and Anthony on the right, and our wingers kept shooting for United. And I think Almiron, although he can cut inside and he can shoot, he's not like an insane finisher. I think Almiron coming on and having to do that first-time cross, which resulted in the third goal, but I don't think he gets an assist because it's an own goal. I thought Almiron looked really good on the left-hand side. I almost thought he looked better. Now, it's obviously early days, but I think sometimes players overthink, and I think sort of playing left-footers on the left and right-footers on the right simplifies the game a little bit more, generally, in my opinion. That's what I'm just saying. I do want to give a shout out to Murphy. Murphy's not been the highest rated player. It's not really a big Newcastle game, but I thought he looked really good today. I know he's been injured. I thought Murphy's looked really good, really impressive. Really stepped up. But I do think we have to talk about the centre-backs. I do think there's a lot to talk about. I don't think Villa were bad. I think there was a point where they looked like they could get back into it, and Eddie Howe adapted with 5 at the back. I thought Bailly was really, really dangerous at times, but then Livramento seemed to deal with it well, and Livramento had a good game. Villa are incredibly dirty. Whenever I watch Villa play, I feel like they make the most fouls. They are incredibly dirty, and I'm surprised they end every game with 11 men. But this was the best I'd seen Newcastle in a while, and in my Fulham match reaction, if you didn't see it, I said they've got Botman back, and I said a centre-back can make such a difference. And the reason I said that, and maybe not those exact words, but the reason I said something along those lines is I said the core of Schar, Botman, Bruno Guimaraes will give them that defensive stability. Because I always think, and I've said this before multiple times, the best teams are sometimes built out from the back. Liverpool went from a top 4 team to being in the title race and competing with Man City once they got Van Dijk and Alisson in, and they had that sort of Fabinho, Van Dijk, Matip, Alisson kind of core. And I think as good as Lascelles had been when he stepped up, Botman is just a different gravy of play. He's incredible. And I think Schar was the best centre-back today, and we'll get to him. He scored the 2 goals. But Botman is a very, very good centre-back. He's someone I would take at Manchester United. I think he's great. Bruno Guimaraes, everyone knows that Bruno Guimaraes is quality. And Schar's a very, very underrated player. Obviously, they're missing Nick Pope, but they've got that triangle of Botman, Schar, Bruno Guimaraes, which gives them almost that a little bit of experience, but also they've got 3 brilliant players. Bruno Guimaraes and Sven Botman. A lot of the big teams would be looking at them as well to get in their side. They've got, I guess, Trippier with experience. Dan Burn, I guess, brings experience. I do think Livramento is a little bit more. I would like to see Livramento given a go at left back over Dan Burn. Personally, just as a rival, because I'm a big fan of Livramento. I think he's more exciting to watch. But I think they've got Botman, Schar, Bruno Guimaraes. They've got that core that's going to give them that defensive stability, give them that experience. That even with the injuries in midfield and attack, at least they're going to have that defensive balance so they don't look super vulnerable like they have in the past. I think they do need to see if they can get a striker because Isak and Wilson can't stay fit. And I think the midfield is on its last legs with Joel Linton injured, and I think Joel Linton is going to be massively missed. But I do think that Botman is massive for Newcastle. I think he's absolutely massive. He gives them the stability. He makes them better. He's a great player. And I think having that core and if Newcastle can have that defensive stability back, they always do find a way to score goals or create. I think they scored the most goals until they had that injury crisis. And I've been saying this about Newcastle. And this is coming from someone that is a complete rival of Newcastle. No bias. From a neutral perspective, I've seen a lot of overreaction and anger and frustration from Newcastle fans over the last month or two. People saying how out, people saying get rid of this player, get rid of that player. And I think you have to get rid of injury-prone players and an ageing squad. And Dan Ashworth has a lot of work to do. Hopefully he goes to United, though. Man United. But looking at it, I know Newcastle are a good team. You are below United. You are now above Manchester United. You've also got 3 winnable Premier League games to play next. So you could go on a run and really sort of push for 6th and 5th and get back on track. But it depends on injuries. But Newcastle were below Manchester United. Newcastle were 10th. Man United was 7th a couple of weeks ago. And I said, Newcastle are way more convincing than United. And Newcastle have kind of been bad because of injuries. United have had injuries, but even when they've had players fit, they've not been good. Newcastle were unbelievable when they had everyone fit. They scored the most goals in the league. They beat Villa 5-1, Sheffield United 8-0, wins versus PSG. When everyone was fit, Newcastle looked really good. And then they were just a drained squad with fitness with injuries. And Eddie Howe's been under a lot of pressure. Newcastle have been under a lot of pressure. And people saying, should Eddie Howe go? He's not doing enough. He's not doing enough. But I looked at the starting 11 that Eddie Howe was lining up. And I looked at Eddie Howe's bench of basically 11 kids and a goalkeeper. I looked at the side that Eddie Howe took to Man United when you knocked us out the Carabao Cup. I looked at the side that beat Manchester City in the Carabao Cup. I looked at the sides that Eddie Howe had rocked up with. I looked at the players in the squad and I said, yes, Newcastle were unbelievable last season and maybe overachieved, but Joel Linton's not there, Isak's not there, Wilson's not there, Botman wasn't there at the time. I was like, they've got no players. They got no bench. They're in Europe. They're playing multiple games. I personally thought there was a bit of an overreaction about where Newcastle are at because I was thinking, with the injuries, with the players missing, what more can Eddie Howe do? I still thought Eddie Howe was getting the best. I think sometimes tactically, I don't think he's always made the right substitutions. I think today he got a spot on going to a back 5. But I've never thought that Newcastle were bad this season. I've always thought they've dropped off because they haven't got the players. Like, I support Man United. I think we're bad because I know we're bad. But I watched Spurs, even when they had players injured and they were dropping points, they weren't bad. I've watched Newcastle, and yes, the performances haven't been good, but we've watched Newcastle play well this season. Like, I probably could name 2 games that Man United played well in this whole season. I could name like 8, 9, 10 games where Newcastle have played well and looked convincing. And I know that Newcastle can play well and do look convincing. I think that they're missing the players, and I think they need to do a big refresh. And I think what is worrying is if Isak is out, they're going to have no striker to the end of the season. If they can do something with FFP, they should do something. But I generally think that Newcastle are a lot better than people think. And I think there was a lot of negativity around them because they were dropping points and the money was spent. But I don't think Eddie Howe could have done really much more with the players available. Maybe that's just me. But I want to talk about a few other things because Bruno Guimaraes, solid performance, always good. Midfield, was good. There was lots and lots of positives. But Schar, 2 goals from Schar today. He was unbelievable. And it's not even just because he scored 2 goals. He put in a very good defensive shift. I mean, Watkins, Diaby, Villa have one of the best goal-scoring sides in the league. I think Villa have got the most goals at home this season. But they were brilliant. But he was brilliant. Him and Botman were brilliant. He got the 2 goals. He made 3 blocks, 7 clearances, 5 out of 9 long balls completed, 33 out of 42 passes, 61 touches, 79% pass accuracy. I thought Fabian Schar was very, very good. I thought he had a very, very good game. And another player that I thought had a very, very solid game that is going under the radar a bit because he started this season immensely. Then he had a few blippy games, but I think he's been good again. And that is Kieran Trippier. I thought Kieran Trippier had another good game for Newcastle, obviously rumoured to leave. And I think if Newcastle did get decent money for him, I'd understand that. Well, that's Bruno Guimaraes' numbers. But as you can see here, we've got both Bruno Guimaraes and Trippier's numbers up. Trippier, 1 assist, 4 key passes, 5 duels won, 5 crosses completed. Very good, particularly good going forward. Bruno Guimaraes, 4 out of 4 tackles won, 10 out of 15 duels won, 6 ball recoveries, 6 fouls won. Bruno Guimaraes won that midfield. Bruno Guimaraes was in control of that midfield. I've been praising Anthony Gordon, I've been praising Botman. They were my 2 standouts. But the experience and sort of excellence of Guimaraes came through. And this is what I say about Newcastle. Anthony Gordon's a young player that's got a very high ceiling. Bruno Guimaraes, Sven Botman, and Kieran Trippier are those 3 players that would get into all of the big sides. Maybe not Trippier so much because he's aging. And they showed their brilliance today. Schar really stepped up. He's playing well. Murphy really stepped up. Obviously, midfield really stepped up today as well. And obviously, they've got a lot of sort of young, inexperienced players, and they've got some experienced players, and they've got some potential superstars. And I think it is a good mix of that as well. But I have to mention, of course, Lewis Miley, how young he is as well. And he's playing a lot lately. And I think he got a new contract, so big up on him. But all in all, that is my Newcastle review. And my general review was, didn't expect that from Newcastle. Like, I think Newcastle were good, and I said they might get better with key players coming back. And I think if their players are fit, they'll be a good side. But I wasn't expecting that today. I wasn't expecting that from Schar. I wasn't expecting Newcastle to play that well against Aston Villa at all. And the media will probably talk about Villa and why did they drop points. But you got to give credit to Howe. You got to give credit to Newcastle. You got to give credit to how disciplined they were defensively, how they found the quality in the final third, how very few teams have won there. So fair play to Newcastle. Maybe they'll be back on track. They've got 3 winnable games next. Let's see. But I think Luton smashed Brighton. Whoa. Hit a like, hit a subscribe. Thank you for watching. Bye.